Hi guys, welcome. My name is Dave. This video is part of a mini-series about the brain and a thought experiment. We are going to have a look at what seems to be going on with perception as it relates to the brain and a vat. This video will be listed in a playlist called Building My Worldview. This is not an educational channel. I also assume you guys have at least some understanding of the topics I discuss from before. All my videos are opinionated. I will start by quickly explaining what the brain in a vat thought experiment is. Imagine that your brain is not inside your skull, but it is instead in a jar or a vat in a scientist's laboratory. The laboratory is in this case in the real reality. The scientist has hooked your brain up to a computer that is running a simulation, feeding your brain with sensory stimulation, simulating this reality. This reality, the reality that you are experiencing, is in this case the simulation from the computer. I hope that was understandable. Now I want you to have a look at some clips from a debate between Dillahunty and Bruggencate from May 31st, 2014.
Truth is that which comports with reality.
Whose view of reality? He could be a brain in a vat. 10 minutes from somebody who can't know that he's not a brain in a vat. It's just fizz. It's brain barf when he's a brain in a vat. He says he could be a brain in a vat. Well, the thing is, you can't know you're not a brain in a vat. Yeah, but you could be a brain in a vat.
You've said that God reveals things to you in such a way that you can be certain. How does that work?
That would be a very good question if you could know that you weren't a brain in a vat.
The reason why I bring up this debate is that Bruggencate is constantly referring to the brain in a vat thought experiment in this debate. And he's claiming that Dillahunty can't account for it, while he's assuming that he himself can. The topic of the debate was, is it reasonable to believe that God exists? Sai's position is that everybody knows that God exists, and that this is the foundation for all our knowledge. Matt's stance is that we don't know, and that we ultimately can't know whether we are brains in vats, but also that it's not a reasonable belief to hold, because it can be ruled out using Occam's razor. Here I agree with Matt. Sai seems not to understand that if Matt is right, the don't know part counts for both parties. This makes Sai's claims irrational. But it also shows that he's not arguing in good faith. He doesn't supply any evidence for his position despite being asked for this. He just restates that everybody knows that God exists. Sai is a presuppositionalist. In my mind, making a presupposition as a method to find something out is interesting. But if used as a tool to avoid questions, like Sai is doing here, is just a dogma that is trying to force onto others. It's a power play. You can find a link to the debate in the description. This video will be a bit different from former videos that I have published. It will present facts that is not so much subject to opinions, but I will present opinions about what I think these facts imply for us. In the next video, I will go into detail about the brain in a vat thought experiment itself, but I feel it's necessary to lay the foundation by clearing up some of what I see as misconceptions about perception first. There is for sure much better videos out there on the interweb about perception, but I haven't found any that points directly to the aspect of perception as I think it relates to the brain in a vat thought experiment. My hopes is that at the end of this video you guys will have been convinced by facts that Satan's position is irrational. Maybe you also have to see the next video. We'll have to see. By the way, I think the debate is legendary. Maybe the best debate featuring Matt Dillahunty of all times. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely head down to the description and follow the link that I have provided to the debate. The debate took place more than 8 years ago, and still new comments are coming in daily. Today there is almost 29,000 comments, and new comments still get loads of replies. The link I provide to the Thinking Atheist channel, and here the debate has 333,000 views. The Thinking Atheist is also a great channel to follow for atheist content, so while you are there anyway to see the debate, you might also consider checking out some of the other content on the Thinking Atheist's YouTube channel. A funny thing is that at the end of the debate in the Q&A you can see Godless Engineer asking Sai a question. It's at about 1:47, right at the end. Godless Engineer is also a channel that I recommend you check out. He is arguing from the mythicist position that Jesus is a myth, that he didn't exist at all. I will also put the link to both Godless Engineer and the Thinking Atheist's YouTube channels in the description. Now let's have a look at some facts about perception as it relates to the brain in a vat thought experiment. Let's say you are walking in the forest. As you walk along, suddenly you see a dog on the path in front of you. This is my dog, by the way. Thanks to Bella for starring in this video. Besides being an absolute thrill to work with as an actor, she is also the love of my life after my wife. Suddenly, the dog runs off into the forest and is gone. Even if the dog is gone, you can probably still see the dog's image vividly in your mind. At least most people can. I have recently become aware that not all people are capable of imagining images or voluntarily bringing images to mind. This is called aphantasia and is, according to studies recited in Wikipedia, affecting 3.9% of the population to some degree and 0.8% to a large degree. Now let's have a look at what seems to be going on. Light from the light source is illuminating the thing, meaning photons that light is made up of, is hitting the atoms in the thing and exciting the electrons. When the electrons jump back to their original state, they release a photon of the same wavelength, color, in a random direction. Some of these electrons enter through the pupil of your eye. Light creates sort of an image at the back of your eye in the retina. This is similar to what is called a camera obscura. This also is the core principle for how a camera house works. It is here that the sensation is happening. Note that you don't really see the thing. What you see is light that has reflected off the thing. At the back of your eye is the retina with a mat of different kinds of light-sensitive cells. Some react on light alone to distinguish between light and dark areas in the visual field, and some is sensitive to different wavelengths of light to distinguish between different colors. These cells induce an electrochemical signal that will travel through the optical nerve back to the visual cortex at the back of your brain. Let's have a look at what's going on in the brain. But bear in mind, I'm not a brain expert. If you have an interest in the details of how this works, you should find an educational channel about it, or even better, go read about it. The area highlighted in blue is the primary visual cortex, where the signals from the eyes are going first. From there, according to the two-stream hypothesis, the signals is spreading further along in the brain in two directions. The first is up, called the ventral stream, illustrated with a green arrow, and the second is down, called the dorsal stream, illustrated with the purple arrow. The first pathway, the ventral stream, the green one, is associated with recognition and object representation, while the second, the dorsal stream, is associated with motion representation and object location. The most important thing that I want you to take home from this is that all of this is happening before you become consciously aware of the thing. This means that when you become consciously aware of the thing, you already know what the thing is, in this case a dog, and where it's located on the path ahead of you. The whole process from sensation, when some kind of stimulus excites a sensory cell and an electrochemical signal is sent towards your brain till you become aware of the thing, is unconscious or pre-conscient. This is true for the complete experience you have with the external reality. And remember that your body, including your brain, is also a part of external reality. You might have noticed that I distinguish between external reality, which is completely unavailable to us, except for through the sensory system, and internal reality, which is the only reality that we consciously is in contact with. The part of internal reality that deals with the external reality, I like to call the mental representation of reality. So then you have the external reality and the mental representation of reality, which is two different things. I will go through some of the terms and concepts I'm using to describe this process. But remember again, the goal of this is not to become an expert psychologist or a neuroscientist. It's just to get a somewhat usable understanding of what's going on to put into the worldview. First is the thing. The thing is a part of external reality. External reality is the reality immediate outside of our consciousness that seems to give rise to sensory experiences. I like to hold the door open to the possibility that there might be other realities and that the external reality might not be the real reality. But this doesn't change the fact that it is the external reality that seems to be the basis for what we call sensory experiences, in one way or another. If we indeed are brains in bats, then the external reality is the reality presented to us by the computer. This means that whether we are brains in vats or the external reality is the real reality is what we call epistemologically equivalent. I will talk more about that in the next video, but remember that what seems to be going on in both cases aligns with the processes that I have described. That is why I used what seems to be going on in the title of the video. If we, or I, are a brain in a vat, the simulation is intentionally made to fool us into believe that we are not brains in vats. Sensory experience is the process that happens when our sensory system is excited by stimulus, exemplary for the visual stimuli, light that enters the pupil and hits the retina. The sensory system includes the part of the nervous system that sends a signal to the brain for processing. After being processed by the brain, the signal is presented for consciousness. I call this that is presented the phenomena. It is important to bear in mind that it's not a thing that initiates the sensory process, but the stimulus. This means that just because there is a phenomena, it doesn't mean that there has to be a thing, or that the thing and the phenomena always has to match up. The system isn't perfect. There is many conditions that can lead to mistakes or hiccups in the perceptual process. Hallucinatory drugs and different kinds of stress is just 2 examples. The brain will also have to choose for us what it is that we are seeing or sensing before this interpretation is presented to consciousness. Evidence of this is illusions like the rabbit duck, amongst others, where it is obvious that the brain has chosen whether the thing on the picture is a rabbit or a duck before it's presented to consciousness. The brain is constantly making these kinds of choices every day. One example of this is facial recognition. When we pass a crowd of people without paying attention and suddenly we recognize someone we know in the crowd, and sometimes we pass an old friend right by on the street without recognizing them. As a dog owner living on the 60th latitude, I often walk my dog in low light conditions in the forest. In this situation, my brain is constantly coming up with potential for things in the forest in front of me. It's a good thing I'm not superstitious and that I know a bit about what goes on in the perceptual system, or I would have to believe that there is all kinds of fairy tale creatures out there in the forest. This is a complicated process, but one of the governing elements seems to be that the alternatives the brain will consider when it interprets what things is dependent to a large degree on what we believe exists from before. It is quite sure that in the case of the rabbit duck, someone who didn't know about rabbits but had a lot of experience with ducks would only be able to see the picture as a duck and vice versa. This is also true for things that is, to say it like this, controversial. Someone who believes in ghosts has ghosts as potential interpretations that the brain can choose for a phenomena to present. The brain seems to also be primed from nature to see certain things like exemplary faces. And we see faces every day, all the time, everywhere. Either there is one or not, like in pareidolia. This might actually be the foundation for the whole cartoon industry. Think of SpongeBob, basically a brick shape with a face. Studies indicate that facial recognition, face perception, might be present at birth, but at least at 3 months old, babies are capable to recognize and show interest in abstract representations of faces. This shows that it might be built into the hardware of the brain from the start. Like I talked about in my last video, non-determinism makes more sense. I also believe that the brain is primed to look for will in the same way as faces, and that this is part of the explanation why some people believe in things like spirits and ghosts and aliens and that kind of things. The phenomena are the basis for the object, which is how the phenomena and the experience with the phenomena is stored in memory. That I use the word object to describe this is the reason why I chose to call the thing in external reality the thing. Now I can distinguish between the thing in external reality and the object in the mental representation of reality. The concept describes the object, but includes additional information. There are 2 types of concept. One is particulars and one is universals. Exemplary, my dog, is a thing that I have a particular concept of, but she is also a dog, which is a universal concept. So Bella is a particular dog, but dog is a universal concept that also applies to many other things. concepts is in my mind always abstract. I think it's crucial to understand that it's also true for particular concepts. This means that my concept of my dog is an abstraction of the thing that exists in external reality. The reason why I distinguish between the object and the concept is that when I'm talking about the object, I am talking about the thing as it is, or as it appears as a phenomena, or as I experience it when I'm away from it. While the concept includes all kinds of knowledge, of all kinds, both historic and present, including knowledge acquired by other means than in interaction or study of the thing. All knowledge about the object is also included in the concept, but not necessarily the other way around. The fact that Bella has 2 different ears, exemplary, is a fact about the object. I can point at her and say, see, she has 2 different ears. But the fact that she is my and my spouse's dog is not a fact that you can find out by studying the object. But it's nonetheless a part of the concept that I have about her. In my mind, everything one describes with words is concepts, or that one has concept of. Internal reality is everything that goes on in my mind, including my mental representation of the external reality. As I hope you already knew from before, or at least learned today, the whole experience of the world goes on inside your head. This also includes your own experience with yourself. The only thing that comes into your brain is electrochemical signals from your sensory system. Insofar as the skull can be described as a vat, you are in fact a brain in a vat. You are of course also a thing, but all your knowledge about that thing that you call you has come to you via the processes of perception and has been presented to your consciousness via the processes I have described in this video. So even your concept of yourself is fully explainable by the brain in a vat thought experiment. That's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and remember to stay tuned for the next video that will also be about, drumroll, the brain in a vat thought experiment. In the next video, I will look at the thought experiment from a historical perspective and talk about what it have meant for us, what there is to learn and unlearn from it. I hope you also are convinced or will be convinced that Seitan Bruggencate is wrong in the debate with Matt Dillahunty. He doesn't know that he's not a brain in a vat, and he probably knows it. And that's why, I think, he at no point tries to explain it other than pointing to divine knowledge that he alleges has been imprinted into us by God. I love to be right, and that is the reason why I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. This counts for all my videos. Please write a comment in the commentary section below, or contact me with some of the contact information I provide in the description below. Especially I hope to hear from you, as I said, if you think I have said something that is factually wrong. Wikipedia should be sufficient sources for most of what I have said. If you struggle to find sources for anything, please notify me and I will get straight to work providing it. Thank you for the view and have a nice day.